any kind of medical equipments. This is my references. Thank you very much for
this. Thank you very much for the presentation. So can you perhaps elaborate on whether this forecasting model was applied in the real world, especially in the recent outbreaks, or is it still in the stage of testing?
Yes, sir. First of all, I thank our colleague Nazim sir for co-author this paper. Actually, these ideas are we took from National Institute of Wind Energy. People are predicting every 15 minutes that wind speed and wind power forecasting. So similar kind of, it's called as ultra short-term forecastings. So we are taking that forecasting model from this National Institute of Fashion Technologies weather forecasting models. First one. Second one, we have a lot of tools, but most of the COVID relevant papers people are using for ARIMA neural network.
Yeah, I think this small forecasting for small periods is very important, especially in industries like energy. If you take especially
actually a lot of people did long-term forecasting, short-term forecasting, like yearly forecasting, monthly forecasting already did, even though weekly forecasting already did. But I have only for 3 days data. I have very 1 day data, 2 day data. I won't predict what will happen the next 15 minutes. That's the thing's the challenge.
So that is basically at a very micro level, so that
yes,
oxygen is available in close vicinity to the patients. Right, makes sense. Okay, I'd like to invite the co-chairs. Perhaps we can start with Dr. Mahana Peruma. Do you have any questions or comments to provide?
Thanks, Nilas. Indeed, that was a wonderful presentation. I think it's a very timely, you are looking at a very timely topic currently presenting in India. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the existing literature, were there any kind of, COVID-19 related models in the existing literature that perhaps, that you relied on?
Yes, very interesting things. Actually, National Institute of Industrial Engineering creating one dashboard for all these and things. The people are not forecasting. Second, who World Healthcare Organizations did some forecasting, medical equipment relevant things. Most of the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Kanpur, IIT Bombay, the people are predicting only for COVID cases and death cases only, not for this kind of oxygen cylinder forecasting.
Yeah, that's all from me. Yeah, I wish you all the best with your paper.
Thank you.
Maybe Dr. Pallegedara, whether you have any questions, you can, or comments.
Yes. Again, I must thank the authors. It was a wonderful presentation. And am I audible to you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Right. Actually, the problem exists all over the world, especially Sri Lanka also, because we had also faced the problem of predicting correct oxygen demand recent past, right? So your model, you have a model with several approaches. For example, Basic Information Criteria, PACI, ACF, and all, yes. Especially, right? Yes. So do you think that your model, can you be able to develop or extend your model to accomplish the requirement or the prediction of other countries, especially for the subcontinent as well, especially?
In future, we are doing for SAARC countries. Now we are started one next level research, because my research is weather forecasting, very ultra short-term forecasting. Now we are developing one neural network model, hybrid neural network model. The same models I'm trying this also in further extensions levels. We tried only for ARIMA models only. Further, we want to like a hybrid, and we are sending this. We are collected one simple district level, state level data, one samples, 3 data samples only we are sending. In future, we are trying a lot ideas. We will
actually, yes, thank you. Actually, I was wondering because your model prediction is quite short period.
yes,
You mean that you are expecting to extend up by
Yes.
using neural networks, so and make it as a hybrid
yes,
version.
hybrid.
Right. What kind of attributes or functionalities should be changed in order to do it? I mean, for example, yeah.
Yes, yes. In attribute level, we are considering a single variables only. For example, the same thing, the People's IIT Bombay and other institutions are in COVID aspect. People are taking death cases plus the confirmation cases, everyday cases. But in this research, we are considering only for a single parameters only. Oxygen demand for that particular times, every 6 hours, what's the oxygen demand? That only single parameters only we are consider. We will do the like next level supervised algorithm. So that time we will consider 1 or 2 extra parameters, attributes also.
Okay, thank you, Pancha. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Just to wrap up the session, just a quick note. Have you considered elements of like maybe the data pool that you're looking at is insufficient to do that? So perhaps that's something you can do in the future. Have you considered the possibility of integrating seasonality aspects, especially with these, the variations of, spikes in cases and so on? Have you considered that? Is this something you're planning to do in the future?
Already that Wuhan and other places, the peoples are did these case studies. The peoples are proved no climatic changes and the COVID cases are not relevant.
Not necessarily related to climate, but what I'm saying is like when there are more cases reported.
Yes, sir. Yes, attribute level we will consider in the future for that things. Thank you.
Okay, so I think with the limited time we'll probably have to wrap it up. I think thank you very much for the authors, the 6 of you. It's an interesting case, and these are very timely topics also, given the the new normal that we are living with. So congratulations to you all, and hopefully you can take it to new heights and hopefully develop into a very good journal article also. So all the very best to the authors. Now, I think with that, we could move on to the second paper of the 4th technical session of the conference. Let me introduce the paper and the authors. The paper is titled as Effect of Supplier Sustainability Risk Management Strategies on Supply Chain Performance. Effect of Supplier Sustainability Risk Management Strategies on Supply Chain Performance. The authors of the paper are Dilini Dineshika Ratnayaka and Chaturani Silva. Both of them are representing University of Sri Jayawardhanapura in Sri Lanka. So I would like to invite Ms. Ranasinghe, the session coordinator, to play the pre-recorded video, after which we can have a discussion about the paper.
Hello everyone. Today I am going to present the findings of our research on the effect of supplier sustainability risk management strategies on supply chain performance. This is a group work done by a group of my colleagues, Dilini Dineshika Ratnayaka from the Department of Decision Sciences, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, and I am Chaturani Silva from the same department, and Sampath Fernando from the Department of Economics and Statistics, Sabaragamu University of Sri Lanka. First of all, I would like to give you a brief introduction to the background of our study. Effective management of supply chain risk is vital for supply chain performance. Today, many organizations try very hard to maintain high level of supply chain performance because of its importance to the overall success of the business. However, a lot of these organizations face a very big challenge related to the supply chain risk coming from various disruptions happening everywhere in the supply chains. However, sustainability risk management has not been addressed in the literature very much. What is sustainability risk management? Actually, sustainability is the degree to which the present decisions of an organization impacts on the future of natural environment, society, and the business. However, organizations, manufacturing organizations and service organizations get a lot of pressure from the customer side to maintain high level of sustainability. Therefore, they normally collaborate with their suppliers in order to maintain high level of sustainability standards in their products and services. But there is the risk that these suppliers react as these buyer firms expect in the sustainability programs. To manage the risk of deviance of the suppliers from the sustainability practices, some manufacturing organizations practice some strategies. However, this effectiveness of these strategies has not been addressed in the literature very much. Therefore, we selected dynamic capability weave as a suitable theoretical foundation to test the effect of the supplier sustainability risk management strategies on supply chain performance. As this theory says, it is very important for organizations to effectively respond to the unstable environment or uncertain environments in order to achieve high level of organization performance. And it will also be important to identify the opportunities and mitigate the risk. Therefore, we formulated these 3 research questions that are going to be addressed in our research. First of all, we would like to evaluate the level of adoption of supplier sustainability risk management strategies in apparel and retail industries in Sri Lanka. We selected these 2 industries considering these industries' importance to our country. And also, we would like to see check the effect of different supplier sustainability risk management strategies on buyer firm supply chain performance, which has no evidence from the literature. And also, we would like to see whether this effect varies across different industries. Since we have considered only 2 industries, we are going to check whether there is any difference between these 2 industries in terms of the effect of supplier sustainability risk management strategies. If I briefly summarize the key literature for our study, it is highlighted in the literature very much the importance of addressing sustainability practices of apparel and retail industries because of its importance to many people, because apparel and retail industries are used by every level of customers throughout the world. And also the sustainable practices, therefore, will have a lot of impact on many people in the world. And a group of researchers have come up with 4 types of supplier sustainability risk management strategies. These are risk avoidance, risk acceptance, collaboration-based risk mitigation, and monitoring-based risk mitigation. If I briefly talk about these 4 types of strategies, organizations can easily avoid the risk of supplier sustainability risk by simply switching into some other suppliers. When the suppliers are not going with the sustainability standards offered by the manufacturing firms, these firms can simply switch to another supplier. And also, due to some reasons, some organization will have nothing to do other than accepting the risk of suppliers as sustainability practices. So, mainly because of the critical nature of these suppliers. If a particular supplier is critical for your firm, you won't be able to remove that supplier. You have to go with that if there is no option, if there is no alternative supplier. And also, some organizations collaborate with the supply chain, with the suppliers in sustainability programs. And sometimes, rather than collaborating, you simply monitor the sustainability performance of the supplier firm so that you, at the end, you will meet the sustainability requirements of the customers. However, it is not well addressed in the literature, the effect of these supply sustainability risk management strategies on supply chain performance. But there is limited literature related to the collaboration-based supplier sustainability risk management strategies. And these researchers in 2019 have identified that there is a positive effect of collaboration-based supplier sustainability risk management on customer satisfaction. However, other strategies have not been addressed, and their effect basically their effect on supply chain performance has not been evaluated in previous literature. And based on this literature, we have developed this conceptual research model and two hypotheses. In this research model, we are going to look at the direct effect of supplier sustainability risk management strategies on supply chain performance. And also, as our second hypothesis, we are going to check the moderating effect of industry on this relationship. And related to four supplier sustainability risk management strategies, we have sub-hypotheses on the relationship between these risk management strategies and supply chain performance. If I talk about the methodology adopted in our study, this is an exploratory quantitative study, because there is no much literature related to the effects of different supplier sustainability risk management strategies. And we used an online survey, including 7-point Likert scale related to all our main variables. And we collected data from 89 apparel and textile industry firms as well as retail firms. You can see the composition of our sample based on the industry and the years of experience of the respondents to our survey, and also supply chain management experience of the respondents. And we used partial least square structural equation modeling approach to test the hypothesis, as well as to check the measurement model validity and reliability. Here I have summarized the results we obtained in our model validation process. So as you all can see here, the composite reliability values, all the composite reliability values related to our main variables are greater than 0.7, and average variance extracted values are greater than 0.5. These two will establish a sufficient level of convergent validity as well as consistency, reliability of our model constructs. And also with the Fornell-Lark criteria, here we are establishing a sufficient level of discriminant validity in our model constructs. Since we have a hierarchical model, we use the disjoint two-stage approach to validate the second order construct of supply chain performance. Because supply chain performance we considered as a construct having 3 dimensions called flexibility performance, resource performance, and output performance. All the constructs ensured sufficient level of validity and reliability. Here I'll be presenting the results we obtained for the first research question. We actually checked the level of adoption of different supply chain risk management, supplier sustainability risk management strategies in apparel and retail industries. Here we applied t-test to check the mean difference between 2 industries. And we identified that there is no significant difference between the level of adoption of these strategies in the 2 industries. And also we identified that the mostly adopted strategies in apparel and retail industries are risk avoidance and monitoring-based risk mitigation strategy. Other 2 strategies are also applied very much, but these 2 are the mostly adopted strategies in Sri Lanka. And this is the path analysis we performed to identify, to test our main research hypothesis. As you can see here, the risk avoidance strategy and risk acceptance strategy have significant effect on supply chain performance. Supply chain performance dimensions also are impacted by these 2 strategies significantly. But monitoring-based risk mitigation and collaboration-based risk mitigation do not show significant effect on supply chain performance. R-square value and the Q-square value, which is the cross-validated redundancy value, indicated that this model has sufficient level of predictive relevance. Therefore, we can support the first hypothesis related to the effect of supplier sustainability risk management strategies on supply chain performance. To answer our third research question related to the moderating effect of industry, we identified that the effect of collaboration-based risk mitigation strategy is different across two industries. According to these p-values, you can see only the effect of this strategy varies across two industries. Other strategies will remain the same for both industries. However, we did not identify any significant impact of monitoring-based supply chain risk mitigation strategy. And here I have summarized the findings of our study. Basically, the two industries, apparel and retail industries, practice all four types of strategies approximately equally. And risk avoidance and monitoring-based risk mitigation are the mostly used, mostly adapted strategies. And we identified that risk avoidance and risk acceptance are most effective strategies in order to achieve higher level of supply chain performance. However, we did not identify any statistical significance of the monitoring-based risk mitigation strategy, but we cannot say that it is not an effective means of managing sustainability. It will have some impact on sustainability of the organization. However, it will not have any significant impact on supply chain performance. Even though we did not identify the significant effect of collaboration-based supply chain risk mitigation in our moderate analysis, we identified that these two will have different impact on two industries. Basically, we can say that this effect of collaboration-based risk mitigation on apparel industry could be negative, and retail industry, that effect can be positive. That means apparel industry should focus on managing this supplier sustainability risk, because with this there is a possibility that they won't be able to achieve high level of supply chain performance. Maybe with a lot of attention on collaboration efforts with the suppliers, they may forget about the customer side. Therefore, it is highly recommended by our study, in order to manage high level of sustainability, it is important to have collaborations with supply chain suppliers, but at the same time, the organization should focus on customer side. Otherwise, they won't be able to achieve higher level of supply chain performance at the end. And also, since risk avoidance and risk acceptance are most effective strategies to manage the risk, we recommend that it would be important for manufacturing organizations to have related statements in their supplier contracts, so that they can avoid the supply chain risk and accept the behaviors of suppliers. Because in their contract level, if they can confirm that their suppliers are also going with the correct sustainability standards, there won't be any issue. They can accept the risk. And also, if they have sufficient clauses in their supplier contracts, organization will be able to switch to other suppliers whenever their suppliers are not going with the right sustainability standards. However, we have some limitations in our research, and we would like to recommend for future researchers, based on our findings, to develop their research in the future. Since this research is limited to two industries in Sri Lanka, it is recommended for other researchers to look into the same relationships in other industries as well as in other countries. Because of their context, these effects can be varied. And also, this is exploratory research. We have tested whether there is a significant effect of these strategies on supply chain performance only. But based on our findings related to positive and negative effects of these strategies, we have tested only two-tail hypothesis. The future researchers can use our evidence to develop one-tail hypothesis related to positive or negative effects of different strategies, and they can do experimental research in future. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would like to answer your questions related to our study. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very informative presentation, especially in an era where we are facing a lot of uncertainty. looking at sustainability and risk management within the same paradigm is very important. I think that's a very good approach. My first question is also attached to that. Dr. Chaturani, maybe you can express whether this study was done during the COVID period or was it preceding that, and whether there might be some moderating effects if through the COVID pandemic, whether there would be some moderating effects in terms of the results that were gathered.
Actually, it was done before the COVID. It is in 2018. Probably the risk and sustainable concerns were out of the scene these days because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I would agree with that. One more thing, actually, we have one more author. That's the third author, Sampath Fernando. You mentioned that because I updated the author list later on. Maybe that's why you have missed the name. So actually, this study was done before the COVID. It is, I think, in 2018.
Yeah, I think perhaps I mean this is a very good foundational study because now especially the retail sector has changed quite rapidly because of COVID-19 with omni-channel supply chains and online coming in, and so I think it will be very interesting for future studies to refer to this one. Especially,
and the other thing is after this COVID-19 pandemic, after some few more years, the situation will be totally different. That's why it is totally unpredictable. Yeah, but when it comes to sustainability practices, they are actually long-term strategies for organizations. So better to focus on that. There will be a lot of disruptions happening every day, but it is recommended for organizations going with these strategies because requirements are getting higher and higher day by day.
Yeah, indeed. So I think it's a very, very good study. Just out of curiosity, I have a small follow-up question also. When you basically focused about the retail sector, was it covering various industries like FMCG, supermarket chains, and even apparel as well as online, or was it?
Of course, I think actually I can't remember what exactly what were the representation, but a lot of retail sectors were represented in our sample. Different fast-moving consumer goods, fashion, all types of in retail industries. Yeah, but the sample is not very large.
But I think it's a good foundational study for future works to build on, and I think hopefully it'll get picked up for publication on journals as well. So thank you for the presentation. I'd like to invite Dr. Pallegedara to jump in if you have any questions, anything you would want to ask, or any comments or feedback you'd want to share.
Yes, Dr. Niels. I just wanted to a small clarification from you. Actually, your approach is much more appreciated because it has all the necessary components towards the quantitative analysis. Always, I have a question of this depending on p-values and the tail test values for conclusion or a conclusion or the recommendations. So do you think that depending on this p-value, ultimately you get p-values because of this quantitative analysis and the two tail test values, can you predict and can you validate the results of which you have obtained with the realistic scenarios?
Yes, actually, p-value is generated in statistical programs considering the sampling distribution of the sample quantity. If we just based on the sample quantity, just suppose we are considering only the path coefficient from one variable to another. If you just consider that path coefficient itself, we cannot say anything about the real scenario. But when it comes to a p-value, we consider the sampling distribution, which means all possible samples that can be taken from the same population, and its distribution is assumed based on sample characteristics. Then we calculate the p-value. So most of the actual that the p-value means there is a 5% chance. All our decisions depends on that. They are that level of significance. So every statistical decision we make based on statistical test will have that much error. That means there's a 5% chance that this result is not valid with the practical scenario, the actual situation, right? But with the p-value, actually we consider the real situation for whole population. Yeah.
Did you try to validate with the real?
Yeah, actually, to answer your question very clearly, if we really want to check whether this relationship is still exists in the actual scenario, we can actually perform qualitative study, following up confirmatory qualitative study. We can go back with our results to practitioners, supply chain strategic planners, and supply chain managers, and ask them, do you agree with this? If they have some experience in practicing sustainability strategies in their firms, we can actually ask. We can get detailed feedback on this by interviewing them. Actually, that is also going to be a good future research direction for the findings, because actually this is not a well explored area. Risk management is there, supply chain risk management, but sustainability risk management is totally different concept. So that's why it is important.
Yes, true that, because a lot of uncertainties are involved during the data gathering, especially.
Yeah.
A lot of questions. Seven Likert type question.
Likert scale data. Yeah.
So that again will consist of some of the uncertainties at that point. So that is why I was wondering what, because ultimately when you're closing the loop, can kind of improvement can be done. But but actually the starting point that will open the door, many doors for the researchers who are interested in these areas. Thank you very much,
Thank
for your interesting presentation. Okay.
May I also invite Dr. Mana Peruma to ask any questions or provide any feedback?
Thank you, Nilesh. Dr. Chaturani, you have done a wonderful job. Like, it's an interesting research paper. Three of you have kind of opened the door for a good, good research stream for Sri Lanka. I have a couple of questions. First, forgive me if I have missed this one. Can I please get to know how did you define the supply chain performance in the first place?
Yeah, actually supply chain performance we identified with three dimensions. I just mentioned in the presentation that only the names of the dimensions because of time limitation.
Yeah.
We considered flexibility performance, output performance, and resource performance.
Right.
In my main article, I have given all the details. When it comes to performance, flexibility performance, companies should be able to respond to the up-to-date requests from the customers. Most important thing is when it comes to supplier sustainability risk management strategies, companies will not have much time to focus on customer side. Right? That's the main idea here in our study. So basically, when the manufacturing organization put more attention on managing suppliers' risk, maybe they will forget about the customers. So supply chain performance can be go down. That's why I think we found some effects, while not significant. That is also significant finding. Actually, there was no much literature related to that. That's why I started this study. And with our results, actually, further research, lot of further research can be done for different research can be done for 4 types of strategies because they are having different impacts. Right?
Yes,
and,
yes, absolutely. I agree with you. Like a few suggestions from me. I don't know, like, you know the research better than me, but just by listening to you, I thought, since you had firms representing different retail industries as well, perhaps you can consider the industry as a control variable, and maybe you can do a comparison study. Before COVID-19, you already have some data, and after the COVID-19, maybe you can collect some data from the firms from representing the same kind of industries. So here the suggestion is like, rather than considering the industry as a moderator here, perhaps you can control the industry.
The thing is, when we use the industry as a control variable, we won't be able to see whether this relationship vary between industry. That's the meaning of moderating effect. So we, definitely for future research, if they want to control that effect of industry, there is evidence that industry moderates the relationship, probably future researchers can include industry as a control variable. But to see the difference, we need to include that as a moderator.
The other thing I thought, like, because you had two groups, like the apparel industry and then the retailers, perhaps maybe you can do like a cluster analysis.
Yeah, actually we did that, not cluster analysis. We did multiple group analysis based on actually it's also very emerging area in statistics, especially in partially square structural equation modeling. We did multiple group analysis to compare the two groups path coefficients.
That's great. I think
your idea is correct.
Thank you. Yes. The results. That's all. By the way, did you do a moderated regression analysis for that, or just the like based on the t-test? You check the moderation.
No. Moderating effect we checked with the partially square based moderating analysis. That is multiple group analysis. Multiple group analysis. Path analysis, actually what happens in multi-group analysis is we run the path analysis 2 times. Software runs together as well as 2 separate groups. That's all. We have that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best for a future publication based on this study.
Okay,
sorry, Nilas, if I took so much time.
Okay, Buddhika, that's all right. I think that was an interesting presentation once again. I apologize. The information that I received was only for 2 authors. So the third author, Sampath Fernando, must be acknowledged from Sabaragamu University. And it's always great to see collaborative publications between universities in Sri Lanka. That's something we need more of. So all the very best to the authors to take this research to the next level. It's definitely a trailblazing research. So with that, I think we can move on to the third presentation this morning for technical session 4 of the conference. And this is another exciting research topic. The title of the paper is Capturing Cross-Border Logistics Processes for Analysis and Improvement. The authors are Namal Bandaranayaka from University of Peradeniya, Senevi Kiridana from University of Wollongong, and Asela Kulatunga from University of Peradeniya. I would like to invite Ms. Ranasinghe as the session coordinator to play the pre-recorded video, and then we can move on to the question and answer session.
Hello everyone, welcome to the paper presentation on capturing cross-border logistics for analysis and improvement. I'm Namal Bandaranayaka from Department of Engineering Management, University of Peradeniya. My co-authors for this paper are Dr. Senevi Kiridana from University of Wollongong and Dr. Asela Kulatunga from Department of Manufacturing and Industrial Engineering, University of Peradeniya. This is the content for my presentation. So I'm going to first start with the significance of cross-border logistics before moving on to the nature of cross-border logistics, why it needs analysis and improvement. Then I'm going to talk about the approach that we take, process modeling, and why it's important to select the correct process model. How are we going to select the model? What is our evaluation criteria? Then I'm going to explain the results of our evaluation before proposing the framework that we put forward to capture the cross-border logistics. And finally, I'm going to talk about conclusions. So cross-border logistics is very significant. So supply chains, they span the globe. So companies source material from different places. They manufacture in yet another place and they sell where the markets are available. So all these things can be in very different parts of the globe. So because of that, cargo, as they are manufactured, sourced and sold, they need to cross the border multiple times. So because of that, performance of supply chains that span the globes are highly dependent upon the performance of cross-border logistics processes. So cross-border logistics processes like supply chains need to be fast, flexible, and efficient. So talking about the nature of cross-border logistics, one of the key things is there are multiple points of handling cargo or goods or containers along the journey. So as they change from one mode of transportation to another mode, the cargo is handled, and sometimes they need to go into storage and taken out of storage. So there are multiple parties who do these different operations. So because of that, cargo changes ownership along the journey, and the custody of the cargo also may change along the journey. So when these changes happens, there's a lot of potential for cargo to idle in warehouses or terminals. And sometimes they are held up for clearances and the correct set of information until the payments are made available. Or it could be that because handling equipment and transport equipment are not available, the cargo has to be held up without movement. So the key takeaway here is there are multiple interfaces along the journey. There are many stakeholders who handle the cargo. So because of these things, there's a lot of potential for inefficiencies along the journey. So because of that, cross-border logistics needs periodic, if not continuous, analysis and improvement, which require, as the starting point, you need to understand the process that the cargo goes through. So because of that, you need a detailed process model. So this detailed process model is what we call the as-is process. Okay? So there are different flows in logistics. So we have the cargo flow, which is the most straightforward. It's usually moves in one direction, so it's relatively easier to represent. However, the informational and financial flows in logistics are not linear. They move backwards, they move laterally. So because of that, to represent the informational and financial flows, you need a formal notation. But unfortunately, there are no sector-specific tools in cross-border logistics to capture these processes. So because of that, significant effort has to be spent on selecting and justifying tools each time a research project or improvement project is done. So because of that, the objective of this paper is to come up with a standard methodology or standard notation to capture cross-border logistics. So process modeling in general depicts processes as an ordered sequence of events. So this process model becomes the key to any sort of process analysis and improvement. So a well-developed process model would enable a common understanding of the processes and a comprehensive understanding of processes for whoever is using that process model. Good process models highlight what is significant and they abstract from things that are not relevant. So there are many different modeling notations that exist in practice, right? So it's a hassle to choose the right one. So the methodology used for model evaluation is we first selected common modeling notations that are available in literature. Then model was selected for each selected modeling notation. the same process model from cross-border logistics was modeled. After that, each process model was evaluated against required perspectives or required views to represent cross-border logistics. So these required perspectives to represent cross-border logistics were determined as the functional perspective. This is what actual function that needs to take place for the cargo to move from one place to another. Then we have the behavioral wave, where the decision flows and the control flows are determined where decisions are taken. Then we have the organizational view, which shows who's going to do what. So it might be a person within the organization, or it can be an organization by itself who is going to perform the task. Then we have the informational view, where information required for decision making and to keep track of cargo are considered. The fifth one is the interaction, because like I explained earlier, cross-border logistics involve multiple parties. So it's very important that we capture these interactions, because unless in certain instances, the multiple parties are synchronized, the next step of action will not happen. So it's very important to capture interactions as part of the process model. Finally, for any kind of process improvement, we need to understand the temporal aspects. To understand where things take more time, where are the bottlenecks, we need the temporal view. Apart from these views or perspectives, we also need to make sure the process models are easy to comprehend. So to ensure that the ease of comprehension, we use the weighted average scoring criteria. So the number of syntax elements in given modeling notations will help to explain the process. So, but when it comes to the comprehension, if you have lower number of syntax elements, it's easier to remember them and it's easier to understand. The total number of elements in a diagram, when you actually depict the diagram for a particular process, it's always easy to understand when there are fewer elements. Then the third thing is, some process models or some modeling notations require multiple views to show multiple perspectives. But on the other hand, when you have multiple perspectives, you need to combine them in your brain to comprehend them. So what we are saying here is when you have lower number of diagrams, it's better for comprehension, it's easy to understand. So to re-emphasize, because there are multiple organizations involved, even developing a process model requires consensus of multiple parties to come to an agreement that this is the correct process model. So that's why ease of comprehension, even for non-expert users, is highly important in developing a modeling notation or evaluating a modeling notation. So this is the result of evaluation. So as you can see, we have the ease of comprehension and we have the 5 of the 6 perspectives that we considered. The 6th one, the temporal aspect, is not considered here because none of the modeling notations that are commonly available are able to capture the temporal dimension. So we left it out. So these are the weighted average scoring criteria. Ease of comprehension, after this initial calculation, we have given it a weight of 5. And all the other perspectives are given a weight of 1. And we have done a weighted average calculation. And based on this calculations, role activity diagrams comes out on top with the highest score in this criteria. So based on this evaluation, we determine role activity diagrams is the most suited notation for modeling cross-border logistics processes. So what we are saying here is cross-border role activity diagrams, as shown in this diagram, is the best way to depict the overall process diagram. What we are also concluding here is the physical flow is best represented using a graphical view, because you can show the equipment involved, the facilities involved, and it's a very linear flow. So because of that, at the highest level, it's easier to show the physical flow using a pictorial diagram. as shown here. And for the rest of the detailed views, we are recommending role activity diagrams. Of course, since none of the modeling notations are able to capture temporal aspects, but still the temporal aspect is important, we are recommending to add an addendum to the diagrams to capture the temporal aspect. Finally, to conclude, role activity diagrams is the most suitable notation for capturing cross-border logistics. So it captures all the required perspective in a single diagram. It's easy to comprehend. You need not have a lot of familiarity, prior experience with role activity diagrams to comprehend the diagram using a role activity diagram. As I explained, you need an addendum to capture the temporal dimensions. On top of that, we are recommending graphical representation to depict the physical cargo flow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Another interesting presentation. I really liked how the information, the financial flows were mapped as well as the material flow separately, and also the interesting finding where the temporal element of it. I think that's very important, especially in cross-border logistics. We have a lot of temporal considerations to really look into. I'd like to invite Buddhika perhaps to start off with the questions. If you have any questions or comments, you're more than welcome to raise them.
Thanks, Nilas. Thank you very much, Dr. Namal. Was that Dr. Namal's presentation? So yeah, it was like a lecture for me, but clearly out of my league. I don't have any questions, but I really appreciate like the way you have built up the presentation, and it's so I would say, yeah, fantastic, like the way you have built up the model and explained it, the sort of analysis. Perhaps maybe if you can clarify us what kind of contributions this study would do for the existing literature. What are you looking for, looking new from your study? Yeah.
Thank you very much for your comments, Madam. So what we are looking at here is to embark on a bigger project to do process improvements in cross-border logistics. So each location has a different set of, because each port system, the processes available are different. So we need to understand what is going on. But when we want to get a clear view of what is happening at each location, what we found out is there's no common method to represent the process flow in each location. So each researcher in different literature, they have used a different set of notations, so which takes up part of the research effort to justify the method of capturing. So what we would like to see in the literature over time is that researchers converge to a single standard in representing the views, so it becomes easier for everyone else to share the work and compare logistics processes across different port systems, so that research effort is saved, and we can easily compare across different systems how things are happening. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, of course. I think actually I truly believe that your paper will picked up by a journal, good journal. It is it's interesting and unique. I would wish you all the best, and
Thank you.
Over this.
Maybe Dr. Pallegedara, if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Nilas. I just wanted to clarify something from Namal. So I just you have fully focused on the capturing of cross-border logistic process for further analysis and some of the improvements. And because that is going to be global context, because of that, to ensure that you can effectively transport the good goods across the borders. So some of the, if you take a global context, you need to consider some of the different strategies of cross-border logistics. Did you consider those different strategies you found in literature or something? For example, sometimes you need to establish warehouses near the transport, the borders. So likewise, did you consider some of the other strategies also?
Thank you, sir, for the question. We have not got into the reconfiguration or how to strategize or how to implement the processes yet. So the objective of the paper is to capture the system as they exist now, right? So when we capture the systems as they exist from different locations, what we want to see is what are the best practices that are there in each location. So if, like you suggested, if establishing a warehouse within the port premises for loose cargo is a good strategy, then when we do the process map on how to import or export loose cargo, we would see in best case scenarios, let's say at port of Singapore or in port of Dubai, as opposed to port of Colombo, they are having such a strategy. So when you compare the process maps side by side, that should become very clear. So what we want to do in the first place is come up with the common notation so we can map the processes and see where such best practices exist. So that is part of the research, overall research project going forward. But now we are at the beginning where we want to clearly map out the existing processes and, like you suggested, the cargo flows and facilities that exist as of now.
Okay, thank you very much. It's going to be very interesting, and we are looking forward to your developments in future as well. Thank you. Now on to the presentation.
There's a question from the audience. Suru Hitiarachi, perhaps you have a question for the
yes, actually,
authors.
this is not a question. It was a really great presentation, and actually from the yesterday knowledge that we gained about the digitization, and that especially we were talking about the blockchain technology. So since yesterday evening, I was reading about that concept, and here I thought that it was a really great beginning to extend this analysis of this process to develop a blockchain technology that related to logistics, because there are already, we know that financing concepts that like cryptocurrency, but this is this process is very complex, that cross-border logistic processes. So those are very complex. So this may be a good point to start to develop a good blockchain technology for the logistic concepts. That's all. Thank you very much. It was a great presentation.
Thank you very much, Isru. Just to add to that, actually, I think you are pointing at our future research direction also. So what we want to see is, once we map the process, we want to try and overlay the technology that should make the process more efficient. So if it is blockchain, that will make the financial flow more efficient. That's what we want to overlay. But so to make the process really work, we need to choose the technology that matches the process. That's why we are starting with the process. Thank you very much for your comment.
Yeah, I think, Namal, that's a good point, because kind of blockchain technology and all the supply chain technology enablers are currently, kind of how can I say, kind of pointing out on the deficiencies in this port handling and all that sort of things. Blockchain has been kind of the emerging research trend in your area, I guess, together with other supply chain technology enablers. I think you can expand your research project as well. Perhaps that's something you cannot avoid in the future. You know, you will have to consider, and especially in terms of freezer, container transport and all that. With one click now, all the warehouses, all the customers, they know where their product is and what are the kind of time frame and the finances going on. That those are very helpful in terms of optimizing the entire supply chain. It's like earlier we thought about supply chain as like an organization's one, but now we have to think the whole organization, whole supply chain as a virtual organization. I think your research kind of moving towards that. Perhaps more interesting areas for you to explore, and wish you all the best. That.
Thank you very much again. Yes, that's what we want to move to, exactly as you suggested. Thank you so much for your time.
Any other questions from the audience and our comments? Yeah, so I have one small follow-up. I think one of the things I was wondering was, have you looked at some of the human elements that are associated with these? Like let's say, for example, sometimes some of these processors, for example, if you take a wharf clerk or clearing agents, there would be certain human elements that might need to be mapped, but it's not really exactly connected to a specific flow. But I mean, depending on who does it, that might create delays. Especially we see that in cross-border logistics, we have some formal processors as well as informal processors. That's very true for Sri Lanka, whether we like it or not. Interesting. What you're doing is very interesting because you're trying to build a uniform framework to map cross-border logistics. That's fantastic. I'm just wondering whether that informal part can be tabulated, encapsulated with the overall process.
So whether it's informal or otherwise, so one of the things that we considered in selecting the modeling framework is whether we can capture the organizational part of it, whether it's a single user or an organization that does the job. So it's interesting that you mentioned the role of a wharf clerk, because that was the process, one of the processes that we used to compare the 6 different modeling notations was a process involving a wharf clerk actually. So like you said, the wharf clerk has certain roles to perform, and things cannot move. That's why you chose interactions also as part of the things, because unless the wharf clerk does something, the process does not move forward. So the synchronization between different actors is also important. So regarding the informal part of it, during the process discovery, we need to understand exactly what needs to happen. So if the wharf clerk is interacting with the customs officer, we are capturing that part. So what happens within that, I think the process model will not capture that. It will capture there's an interaction, there's a transaction happening. But what is exchanged beneath is whether it's document or anything else. The documentation part, of course, will capture because the information flow is required. If other than that, if something informal happens, yeah, it's not captured.
Yeah, but I think nonetheless, it's a very, very interesting research. I think a lot of freight forwarders are facing some difficulties, especially consignees. They are somewhat, they get the services, but they need to have some visibility as with respect to the flows of materials, money, as well as information. And I think trying to uniform them have them on the same page so that there is no real confusion is really, really outstanding. I think what you're doing is very appreciable, and hopefully it will get picked up for further dissemination by journals as well. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for the fantastic presentation, and all the very best for the future journey with this particular project. Thank you. Yes, so I think with that, we can move on to the penultimate presentation of this technical session. And let me introduce the title of the paper. The title of the paper is Quantification of Landside Congestion at the Port of Colombo, an analysis based on GPS data. The authors of the paper are Kumushuni Tennakon from University of Peradeniya, Namal Bandaranayaka from University of Peradeniya, Senavi Kiridana from University of Wollongong in Australia, SGJ Senaratna from University of Peradeniya, and Asayala K. Kulatunga from University of Peradeniya. I would like to hand the controls over to the session coordinator to play the pre-recorded video, and after that we can have a discussion about the findings and the way forward with respect to this exciting research.
Hello everyone, this is the presentation of the abstract ID 52 under the topic Quantification of Landside Congestion at the Port of Colombo, an analysis based on GPS data, presented by Kumushuni Tennakon. This is the content of the presentation: introduction, problem statement, methodology, results, conclusion, limitations and future research, and references. It is important to see the significance of the Port of Colombo and about hinterland transportation, about congestion of the Port of Colombo in the introduction section of this presentation. The strategic location of the Port of Colombo helps to act as the hub of the maritime logistics in the Indian Ocean. Colombo Port holds the 25th rank in the world in TEUs handled, and also it has the only deep water terminal in South Asia. Having all the benefits above, still Colombo Port has a poor logistics performance index. Hinterland transportation is a prominent segment in cross-border logistics, which connects shippers, consignees with the ports. Although trucks, barges, and trains are used as the modes of transportation, trucks are the most popular. Trucks can use the existing infrastructure unlike railways, and also able to access more remote locations. Large volumes of trucks can cause congestions within the port. But there are systems developed to provide appointments for trucks at different ports to reduce the congestion and to increase the efficiency of the port operations. But in Sri Lanka, we cannot see any systems developed until now. The anecdotal evidences show that the congestion of the Port of Colombo has been increased. This can cause additional cost for the importers and exporters, increased lead times for exports and imports, has potential to reduce efficiency of seaside port operations, and may have spillover effects to road congestion in the vicinity of the port. This is the problem statement of the study. Quantify the time spent by container trucks during different segments of import and export trips on the road and at processing facilities during different time periods of the day using truck GPS data. The GPS data were collected from the trucks equipped with the GPS trackers, and the data has a potential to uncover the previously unforeseen insights of the port operations. The methodology can be divided into 4 steps. In step 1, obtaining GPS data from hauling companies engaged in container transportation, and the data contained around 1 million GPS data pings of 12 trucks hauling cargo in and out of the port for a period of 12 months. Dataset has date and time, GPS coordinates, and the point speeds. In the step 2, the dataset was subjected to the cleaning and pre-processing. Here, the invalid and the incomplete trip records were removed. In step 3, for each truck, the discrete trips were identified which were moving inward and outward of the port using an algorithm, and then organized them separately for the use of future analysis. Here, the difficulties were faced when identifying the import and export trips because the GPS data points were overlapped in the inward-outward movement of the trucks. Both step 2 and 3 were achieved using Python programs. The two maps show the path of the trucks within the port. In the first map, the actual GPS points has been mapped starting from Ingurukade Junction to the Colombo International Container Terminal. The trucks take the same route to move back from the port. In the second map, I have marked the trace path of the GPS points and also the considered segments for the analysis and the respective distances. Step 4 is the statistical analysis, and after calculating the time for each segment of the trip during the different times of the day, an analysis was carried to check the variance of the time for segments of the journey and processing facilities using ANOVA test in the RStudio. Here, the null hypothesis was taken as means are equal for the time intervals in the selected road segment, and alternative hypothesis is means are significantly different. Following are the segments and time slots considered for analysis. For export trucks, Ingurukade Junction to Export Facilitation Center, time spent at Export Facilitation Center, time from Export Facilitation Center to Port Gate, time from Port Gate to Colombo International Container Terminal. For import trucks, time from Colombo International Container Terminal to Port Gate, time from Port Gate to Ingurukade Junction. The time slots were divided into 6 as in the morning half was divided into 2 from 12 midnight to 6 a.m., from 6 a.m. to 12 noon. The evening half was divided into 4 as 12 noon to 3 p.m., 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and again 9 p.m. to 12 midnight. Time slots were divided according to the availability of the data inside these time slots. The results by the usage of the time of the day can be interpreted using the trip count for both import and export trips. Here the data reveals that the highest number of trips are in 12 noon to 9 p.m. time slots. There are strong preferences to move cargo during and close to the office hours. This is the temporal analysis of the export movements. I have considered 4 segments here. Variation of the mean time from Ingurukade Junction to Export Facilitation Center Gate, variation of the time from EFC to Port Gate, then from Port Gate to Colombo International Container Terminal. Finally, the mean time variation inside the Export Facilitation Center. In the first segment, the mean time, the variation of the mean time is statistically significant, and the average speed variation is from 0.6 kilometers per hour to 1.7 kilometers per hour. Since the other 3 segments do not show any significant variances, we can conclude that the segment outside the port is impacted by road traffic and export processes within the Export Facilitation Center and inside the port are smooth. In temporal analysis for import movements, I have considered 2 segments, mean time from terminal to port gate mean time from port gate to Ingurukade junction. Here there is a significant variance in the average speeds for both segments, and the average speed drops to 3.8 kilometers per hour during 12 noon to 9 p.m. for the trips from terminal to port gate. Following are the conclusions. Strong preference of users to move cargo during and close to office hours. The speed of movement of trucks from 12 noon to 9 p.m. slows down to 0.6 kilometers per hour in the statistically significant segment in the export trucks. Average speed drops to 3.8 kilometers per hour during 12 noon to 9 p.m. for the trips from terminal to port gate in the import segment. Use of heavy trucks during afternoon peak hours may add to the congestion in the city. Port resources are underutilized during the off-peak hours, and there's a potential to save on the cost for trucks, opportunity cost for trucks, drivers, cleaners time, and the cost for fuel and emissions. Limitations and future research. Limitations are analysis is based only on the truck movements to and from Colombo International Container Terminal for either export or import cargo. Here, the trips containing both have been excluded. The data is from a single hauling company, and the data does not extend beyond Ingurukade Junction. As the future research, the analysis can be continued for the truck movements for South Asia Gateway Terminal and Jaya Container Terminal. The algorithm can be improved to include trips comprising both import and export steps in the same trip. Following are the references used for the study, and this marks the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I think that's a very interesting presentation. Is there any specific reason? What was the logic behind defining the time ranges during the day? Can you perhaps explain that?
Yes, sir. I considered, hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, first I divided the time into 3-hour time slots, but when it comes to the analysis, some of the time slots has a low number of data points, that means number of trip count. So since we are considering an ANOVA test and we assume that the samples are normal, we have to have more than 25 trips per time slot. So then I again divided the time slot for the morning half to 2 and for the afternoon half to 4.
Okay, but I think one of the interesting things perhaps you'll have to look at is the distribution. So especially in terms of truck arrival, it's not normally distributed, especially to the best of my knowledge, from Wednesday to about Friday, there's a huge peak starting from about 3 p.m. which runs till midnight. I'm not. I mean, don't take it the wrong way. I'm saying that maybe that's something you can take into consideration, especially when you're doing the analysis, because you're specifically looking at the import and export trucks. And you're primarily looking at trips between Ingurukade and CICT. So you're not, it's a very unique system that you're looking at. That's good, nothing wrong with that. But we have to be very careful because there would be other parameters, other variables that will be affecting the congestion, the delays. Say, for example, if there's a queue in SAGT, if there's a queue at, ITT, trucking movements between the terminals, interterminal trucking. So those things also have an effect. So maybe think about, considering those distributional boundaries that would be there, because as we can understand, the distribution might not be entirely normal for us to consider a very simplistic ANOVA. so don't take it the wrong way, but what I'm saying is maybe look at some of those analytical methods also, which will also be insightful. That will draw a lot of interesting inputs. That's just a suggestion from my side. And also one of the questions that I have is with respect to the GPS data. You mentioned about the large pool of data and things like that. Can you also share, like with respect to your data pool, whether you had information regarding like some of these trucks being 20 footers or 40 footers? Did you have such information as well to support some more like interpretive outcomes? That whether there was some information about whether the truck had a container on it or was it empty, things like that. Was there some information that you gathered, or it was just GPS data relating to the movement of the trucks?
Yes, sir. The data set contain only the GPS data, point speed and the GPS points and the date and time. There were no any other like data regarding the truck capacity and other things.
But I think it's a very good study. I feel this is something very timely because actually I have also done a couple of studies, but more from an ITT perspective, not from the import-export side. So I can really attest to how important this is because, as we know, our port is running at, we are reaching the highest capacity. We are having a capacity crunch. And one of the challenges we are having is in terms of moving the containers in and out of the terminals. So what you have done is very useful. I feel that there's a lot of value there. And it's really encouraging to see that you have got data from a private organization that is in haulage business. Because sometimes it's very, sometimes organizations are a little reluctant to share the data. So you have a real data set. So I think you are sitting on a very, very interesting research that will be very useful for the Colombo port in general. So really excited to see what you presented. Maybe just, you can think over the couple of suggestions I made. You can discuss it and take it forward if you think it's worthwhile. So it's fascinating, really good work. Yeah, so I'd like to invite
Thank you,
Dr.
sir, for the comments and the questions.
Yeah, you're welcome. Dr. Pallegadar, do you have any questions or comments?
Actually, that was a very good presentation, and thank you very much, Neil, for giving good suggestions as well. But due to this time constraint, I just skip my concerns because I just appreciate your work. I will discuss further and when the time permits. So this time I will not give any question to you.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'd also like to invite the Dr. Buddhika for any questions, if you have any comments or questions.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Nice graphs. I'll give my comments quickly. I also agree with Dr. Nilas because your research reminds me of my kind of individual research, which I did for my bachelor's. That's just after the war when Sri Lanka allowed GPS technology to operate in the industry. And so I kind of developed key performance indicators for the GPS usage for the containers. Likewise, even with the limited data you have, maybe you can open your eyes into the key performance indicators that can be used for the container operation and for your research. And then you can kind of back up your study and improve the significance of your study in line with Dr. Nila's suggestions. Yeah, that's all I have to say. There are lots of key performance indicators related to the GPS technology, which you can easily apply into your research. Just have a look on that. And I wish you all the best. Yeah.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you.
Anyone in the audience, if you have any questions or feedback for the authors, you're more than welcome to share your thoughts. It seems like there are no questions or comments, but really it's a commendable piece of work. I think you have a very interesting data set. I think that's something that is going to tell a lot of stories about the problems that are persistent within the port in terms of moving containers in and out of the port. So I think I have quite a strong feeling that this will go a long way if you work on it and you can continue to work on it. I have a feeling that this might lead to a very exciting publication in a good reputed journal. So I wish you all the best. Fantastic research. So with that, I think we can move on to the final presentation for this technical session. So the final presentation that we have in store, just let me quickly open this up. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so the title of the paper that we are going to listen to right now is Application of Fuzzy FMEA to Improve Net Working Capital. Application of Fuzzy FMEA to Improve Net Working Capital. The authors of the presentation are Isuru Hettiarachchi from University of Peradeniya, Prasanna Illankon, I hope I got it right, from University of Peradeniya, and Asela Kulatunga from University of Peradeniya. So this sounds like a very interesting application of failure mode and effect analysis. So hopefully we'll get to discuss about it after the presentation, after the pre-recorded presentation is played by Ms. Ranasinghe.
Hi everyone, I am Isuru Hettiarachchi. I am working as a planning engineer in maintenance and procurement scopes. The co-authors are Dr. Prasanna Illankon and Dr. Asela Kulatunga from the Department of Manufacturing and Industrial Engineering, University of Peradeniya. So I'm going to show you how you can optimize the utilization of the working capital allocated for engineering spare parts. Industries spend a lot of money for their assets and also for maintaining those assets. Actually, probably you already know MRO inventory, the maintenance, repair, and operational inventory. It plays a key role in inventory management. Here we are talking about hundreds of millions. As a fact, in my organization, it has budgeted 700 million. Even we exceed that every year. So therefore, there should be a better risk management tool to support these purchasing decisions. Failure mode and effect analysis, FMEA. This provides a systematic method. This provides a systematic approach for this risk assessment team. But although the application of conventional FMEA has been very useful in previous assessments, now it has often misled the priority issues due to the same weightages put on the parameters that we consider on FMEA, like severity, occurrence, and the detection. So our aim is to improve and optimize the utilization of the working capital allocated for engineering spare parts by prioritizing the failure modes practically and efficiently by applying fuzzy FMEA. First, we have to define the system boundary for the study, and then we work out on fuzzy FMEA and conventional FMEA. And finally, we will derive the essential engineering spare part from the formulated recommendations. So here, the defining FMEA team is a critical step. The accuracy of the study comes with the knowledge and the decision making of this expert team. It means this exercise is subjective, and especially when we define the fuzzy rule base, it's very prominent. So here is the system boundary diagram, and here you can see some images of a plant, and here's the VFD and the motor that we considered for our study. Then the conventional and fuzzy FMEA have been worked out, and the failure mode ranking is done based on the risk priority number. So for the conventional FMEA, we obtain the conventional risk priority number, and then for the fuzzy approach, we obtain fuzzy risk priority number. So failure mode should be assessed against the severity, probability, and detectability. Especially, severity can be evaluated considering production losses and environmental, health, and safety impact, and the cost for the repair. So here in conventional FMEA, we go deep into each subcomponent and then brainstorm failure modes and their effects. Then we assign severity, occurrence, and detectability values to evaluate the risk priority number. For the fuzzy FMEA, we use MATLAB. So there we define the fuzzy system and then we define the inputs and the output. Then we define the membership functions of those variables, and then we do a coding part to obtain the results. Actually, the critical steps of this fuzzy FMEA is defining the fuzzy rule base. So huge amount of efforts we have done to define this fuzzy rule base, and then we do some coding part to input the matrix of the severity, occurrence, and detectability, and to obtain the fuzzy risk priority number. Here we have ranked every failure mode according to the conventional risk priority number and fuzzy risk priority number. So recommendations have been formulated only for prioritized failure modes. This is the observation that I wanted to highlight here, that all the historical breakdowns of the considered system boundary has been prioritized to fuzzy RPN rank 1 from fuzzy FMEA. So here in our case, the fuzzy FMEA has prioritized the failure modes better than the conventional FMEA. With a better risk assessment tool, we can take better decisions in engineering spare part purchasing. And also, even the inventory requirement can be reduced by increasing the lifetime of the installed components by implementing a better maintenance strategy upon the recommendations. So, the ladies and gentlemen, that what I was wanted to share with you, and I should thank and appreciate the efforts of our FMEA team, and I really appreciate that you took time to listen to me, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I think we are quite short on time, so we'll have to quickly move on. So I think it's quite interesting. I don't really have any questions, but all I have to say is it's a very interesting representation of how to update the RPNs, considering the fuzzy FMEA. To look at spare parts. I think spare parts inventory is a very interesting area. There's a lot of research being done in this area. A lot of focus is there on MRO supply chains nowadays as opposed to some time ago. So it's an exciting project with a lot of implications down the line. Perhaps more implications internationally than locally because of the manufacturing focus of other countries being much more profound than that of Sri Lanka. Not to say that it's not relevant to Sri Lanka, it is relevant to Sri Lanka, but I think it's an internationally oriented research which can be extended beyond. So congratulations on that. So to quickly move on, let me invite Dr. Pallegedara if you have any questions or comments.
Yes, Dr. Niels, I just wanted to thank Mr. Isuru come forward and trying to do some analysis based on this maintenance point of view. And I just wanted to tell you something about your research. You have totally focused on VFD and a motor, right? And based on this two component, you have developed your fuzzy rule base. Right? If you that is quite focused, right? Focused in a particular area. Do you think that if you consider a company which has a lot of maintenance processes, right? If you can extend the same platform to be the next level for addressing other areas as well, So do you have any idea about addressing these areas with the use of fuzzy logic?
Yes, thank you very much. It's very interesting. Actually, it's still a debate, and I can tell you that the levels of criticality, severity, and occurrence is depend on the part we are considering, the process boundary that we are considering. Because let me tell you that if it is a plant that we at the end of the customer end, because that if it is like a packing plant, so that then the severity that we define severity levels like very small time. So if we can't bear any small stoppage at the customer end, but this is at the middle of our production process, and the criticality of this is the pyro process is it's very complex, and it's very hard to control. So here we have defined different levels. So it's actually we can get an idea from this rule base, but we should think about if we going to implement this rule base to another plant area.
Okay, thank you. That sounds good. And generalization is quite difficult, but at the whole, you must try to implement some of the rule base, because some of the experienced users might leave the company. So getting the experience and converting them to rule base, and that will be more interesting in future advancement as well. Thank you very much, Ishuru. Your interesting work. Congratulations.
Dr. Buddhika, we have only a few minutes left, but if you have any comments and questions, feel free to raise them.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah, that's a good presentation. I think you have proposed a practical model. Just wondering, practically, these kind of fuzzy models, do they incorporate with the ERP systems of a company, of a manufacturing plant, or does it come with like technology enablers like artificial intelligence or machine learning? What's the practical scenario here?
Yes, actually, we haven't included. Actually, there's no provisions to include this fuzzy tool or anything to this currently existing ERP system. We are using SAP, and it's very old-fashioned, and we cannot do much modifications with it's very costly, and we haven't actually included this into ERP system. And as you said, in literature, we have found that this FMEA have done using different levels of different tools. Actually, here I used MATLAB to develop this rule base. So we can use there's a usage of that artificial intelligence. We can develop a model and we can train with some breakdown history and cost model. So there was some studies, and it was actually for very complex, and it was far beyond this in the system levels of in our organization.
Thank you so much, and wish you all the best.
I think as we are running out of time, I think we'll have to stop it there. It was a fascinating session. We spoke about 5 different topics ranging from COVID-19 to FMEA to sustainable risk management in supply chains, spanning into cross-border logistics as well as trucking in ports. So a lot of food for thought. Thank you very much for all the presenters, and thank you for everyone who joined the session. It was a pleasure to chair the session as well. And I especially thank Dr. Buddhika and Dr. Pallegedara, the co-chairs of the session. I would hand over the proceedings to Ms. Ranasinghe, who's the session coordinator, to end the session on a high as we are waiting for another keynote speech.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Nilas Pereira. So I would like to thank you all the members, chair and the two co-chairs, Dr. Pallegidra and Dr. Manna Perumal. So before we wind up, I also like to thank all the presenters for their fascinating presentations and present today for the Q&As, and also the audience for their time. So please remain in the same link so you can join to the fourth keynote of the conference by Ms. Gainidi Alvis, Global Chairperson for WILAT. Thank you so much.